Hi there, my name is Victoria Kallsen and I'm the founder of Bedrock. Thank you so much for joining to watch a replay of our webinar, How to Hit 500K in Revenue in 2025. We hosted this webinar live on January 8th, 2025, but we're hosting it here on eWebinar so you can get a chance to check out all of the content that we put together for people like you. Even though this is a replay and a recording, we have added interactions to generate conversation with you as a viewer of this content, and myself and members of my team will be available in the chat to answer your questions. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. I'm Victoria Kallsen, founder of Build Bedrock, and we're here to talk with you about how to hit 500K in revenue in 2025, even if you're starting a little bit late. And with me, I have Max from the CEO Strategy, and we're going to talk here about goal setting. My name is Victoria, like I said. I like to say I'm an engineer by trade and a salesperson by accident. I spent the 6 years before starting Build Bedrock pitching to companies like USPS and Amazon, doing a lot of B2B selling, especially in the enterprise space. In that time in tech sales, I've learned a lot, moving from that technical engineering space into someone who can pitch to companies like this. And at Build Bedrock, we help startups get their first 50 customers, and we really enjoy helping startups like you do the same.
Hey everybody, I'm Max Polec. I'm happy to be here. I've had a little bit over of 10 years of startup and business experience, and I've worn many, many different hats. I've been an accelerator director for a program in the southeastern part of the US. I've also been an operator. I worked at a consumer electronics company as director of growth and COO. A lot of the work that I did at that business informs a lot of the growth strategy that I do now with various companies, various businesses. And right now I do executive coaching. I've been running my business for about 5 years, and that's really all about how can we make better leaders that have the impact they strive to have across themselves, their team, and their organization. And since I am also a quote unquote real person outside of work, you can catch me woodworking, reading, travel, and I'm based in the wonderful, wonderful city of Pittsburgh.
Yes. Pittsburgh is definitely one of the best cities to live in, and where I live and met Max as well. I like to think I'm a real person, and my hobbies are mostly running. I just didn't put it on my slide. Well, to get us started here, what are we talking about today? We are going to focus here on the 10 common mistakes startups make when setting goals, how to set a revenue goal. If you've never done one before, we can help. And then how could I actually hit that 500K? What does that goal setting in action look like? So kicking us off, those 10 common mistakes that I mentioned. We're going to focus up here, and really the thesis statement, the hot take, is that we've often forgotten what a good goal even is. It turns out 500K in revenue in 2025 isn't really a good goal to set. It seems like you're measurable enough, there's a number in it. It seems relevant to your business. You desperately need revenue right now, and you're time bound by setting a deadline. So all those things seem to be really great. But it's not specific enough about how to achieve it. We don't actually have the understanding of how we're going to get to that 500K baked in yet. What do you need to keep versus add when it comes to revenue? Do you have current customers and you need to renew existing customers? Do you need to close new business? All of that is going to come together to be your total revenue. And so you want to be very specific about where that revenue stream might be coming from. Different companies, especially those, a little bit further on, they are going to have a lot more revenue they need to protect and avoid churn. Whereas a startup that's going from 0 to 1 right now is really focused on closing new business. And so let's start improving that objective. We're going to change I need 500K in revenue in 2025 to I want to close blank in new business. And then let's now move to the second mistake we see startups make a lot, and that is focusing on outcomes over inputs. We really want to now start talking about the actions to achieve that goal now that we've zeroed in on I need 500K in new business in 2025. And the way to go about that is to use a system called objectives and key results. Objectives are going to have those actions baked into them to achieve them. So, when I first started speaking with Max about this conversation, he brought this term to me called a North Star, and that 500K in revenue in 2025, that's a really good North Star. That's a really good area you want to move to. An objective that is a little stronger is wanting to close that revenue in new business. And then the key result, those will be the actual actions and activities you do to make that revenue happen.
And to build off of the definition, so the most important thing about goal setting, the most important thing about strategic planning is you ultimately find something that works for you. Just by nature, my preferred framework of choice is OKRs, or objectives and key results. When I say objective, just to be able to establish a shared definition, I want you to think about what. What is to be achieved? Is it measurable? And think of it as a finish line. So if we're talking about the objective or what that finish line is, it should be very clear what the finish line is and when we pass it. Again, this helps us be very concrete with how we're conceptualizing the what to be done and avoid fuzziness, which typically leads to us missing the mark or just not executing on our plan. So again, when I say objective, when we talk about objectives on this webinar, think what? What is to be done? What is to be achieved? And then for key results, this fits underneath each of those objectives. This is going to be the how. So think about it as the inputs, the things that you're doing, the actions you're taking. These are going to be specific. They're going to be time bound, but they're also going to be aggressive and realistic. So if you are aiming to close $500,000 in annual revenue, you might break that down into different objectives, such as securing new business, retaining existing business, and also probably upselling your existing business as well. And each of those objectives could have different actions or key results, aka the how that you're doing to be able to make sure that you're hitting the mark on those objectives. So again, objective, think what is to be done. Key results is how, aka the actions, the steps we're taking to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly that. Thank you, Max.
You got it.
Yeah, so moving on to our third mistake we see a lot is setting those time frames too far out. And so you've probably gotten a sense of just how murky, setting a goal for the entire year can be. Our brain is really a lot more focused on smaller, more manageable chunks. And I think, one of the quotes I really love here from Douglas Adams is just, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing noise they make as they go by. And just setting a deadline really far out isn't always something that can really keep you focused and able to achieve that goal. In my research preparing for this podcast, for this webinar, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of the research on setting goals is a lot more about breaking it into sub goals. If you are, a runner, if you run a couple races, you know that they set mile markers at every mile along that half marathon or marathon, and really focusing in on what is that next mile of accomplishment that I'm going to make really can help narrow in what you are attempting to do and keep it a lot more realistic in the day to day. And I think Max too wants to chime in here.
Yeah, for that third mistake that you mentioned, setting the timeframes too far out, the two things to consider. One is a best practice for startups. The other is going to be a best practice in general. For startups, the tough thing about doing goal setting is we typically lack historical data, right? It's hard for us to say what we plan our annual revenue to be if we are pre-revenue or if we only have a few months of data. So the way that you can kind of plan around that is to set your parameters instead of, say, planning out for the full year. Maybe it's just for the next month ahead or the next quarter ahead, and getting better at calibrating that over time. So something to keep in mind is it's okay if your strategic planning is more clunky because you're lacking data to inform how you think about the future moving forward. The other thing, and this is a great tactic, regardless of your organization size, is all too often people make their OKRs and they put it in a box and forget about them until they have to go back and review it. I worked with a biotech company for about 2 years, and the super simple tactic that we deployed to actually get them to move forward on the OKRs, we would set them quarterly, and I would simply meet with the team and the owners for each of the key results once every other week to basically show up and say, where are you at? What have you done? What's missing? Are we on time? And it was something that only took half an hour, but that forced everyone to be able to say, okay, what did we write down? Am I actually executing? Instead of waiting for a full quarter to go by and everyone saying, we forgot about them, we put them in a box, we didn't move the needle on them. So those are two additional yes ands or two additional pieces of advice to consider on that.
Yeah, and that really segues perfectly into number four here of knowing where your goals are. It's often, like you said, that those goals are put into an online tool, onto a company Notion page, and no one actually knows where they are or what they actually are performing against. This is something we even found like at Build Bedrock here, where I did survey my team last December, and half the company wasn't quite sure where our goals actually were, even though we had gone over them in the beginning of the quarter. And that's really a lot of these come to sort of the leadership that you'll need to bring as a founder to your company, and that type of narrowed focus of keeping those goals very visible to your team, even if it's very small right now, is going to pay off as the organization grows. The fifth mistake here, a lot of these are really just about the noise that we see in startups when they're setting goals is they're really ambitious, they have lots of dreams, but really setting fewer goals will get you farther because it's all about that narrowed focus. We also recommend that instead of dictating goals, that you do make sure your members of your team feel listened and heard to when you're setting those goals. Max and I talked about using start, stop, continue with your teams.
Hmm.
Ask your teams, what can we start doing? What should we stop doing? And what should we continue doing? These people are the eyes and ears of your organization as much as you are as a leader and a founder. And keeping that awareness when setting your next quarter's goals can pay a lot of dividends as well. And then I wanted to bring back that story of the runner, that narrowed focus of attention. As a founder, as a business owner, as a person, there are so many priorities that are coming across your plate, from, other work ones, whether that's things happening on the technical product side, things happening on the sales side, things happening operationally you need to be in charge of. There's many things happening personally. Personally, you're trying to run a marathon, or you're trying to make sure you have a life outside of work. Making sure that you do stay focused on what's important and not getting distracted by new ideas too often, or letting them distract you from those objectives you laid out can be really important for making sure you reach the end of that milestone. And I think a good way to sort of check in about where are my goals and will I actually be able to achieve them is to audit your calendar. I actually pulled, basically my calendar for this week to say, am I focused enough on the activities I know are objectives? Because those will actually allow us to see if we're going to put in action the activities that will lead to that increased revenue. And then moving on to, I believe we're at still, I guess, still staying on the calendar idea. A question to ask yourself here, of course, is do you have the time? Do you need help meeting this goal? Are you able to put the effort into the types of key results you're coming up with to connect with new customers, to build out those lead lists? Those are all things to have in the back of your mind in terms of will I actually need help, whether that's internal or external, to pursue the revenue goals I have in 2025. And then the mistake number eight here that we wanted to speak on was about auditing your performance constantly. There's so much strength that startups have to move more flexibly when things aren't working and going according to plan. Like Max said in his example earlier, are we actually checking in our performance every week, every 2 weeks? Is this objective that we set out or the key result actually doing the things we want it to? And it's a really good opportunity to just audit your performance as a startup.
And also adding in here too, it's one of those things that keeping in mind, again, as a startup, you don't have historical data. So you very well might be figuring out who is the ideal customer we're trying to reach out to. What does our sales funnel process look like? What does a closed deal look like? And how did that happen? And how can we learn from what it took to go from someone not knowing about us to learning about us, being interested in buying, and ultimately making that purchasing decision? The tool here is a retrospective. So you might organize this after the end of a project. Think of it as a closed or lost deal. You might do this on a time basis, maybe at the end of a month or at the end of the quarter, where you look back and say, what did we learn, both good and bad, and what do we need to do different with that new context, with that new information. One of the things I love to do with early stage startups as they start closing their first deals is to pause and say, okay, let's go back and look at everything about this new customer and figure out what we can learn from it. And also, are there lookalikes similar to that customer, whether it's a person on business to consumer or a organization or business on B2B, and figure out what can we learn from this so that as we move forward into the next month, into the next week, into the next quarter, that we are operating in a way that we're able to increase the confidence, increase our success rate as we navigate working towards our goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the terms that's really helpful here is benchmarking. So if your goal is to reach out to 5 people on LinkedIn every day, at the end of, a month, you have what, 30 times 5 experiments you've just run on that type of engagement. Were you actually getting the results you were expecting from those 150 people you reached out to? Did any of those turn into meetings or conversations? And what might you need to improve either in your messaging, in how you're doing it on LinkedIn, to actually move forward into seeing that translate into that revenue you're looking for? So moving to mistake number 9, there's a real debate, I think, at times about balancing the achievable and the inspirational. And I think for myself and a lot of founders, I've always been a dreamer, right? This is why we start companies. This is why we go out there with our products and release them to the world because we think the world can be better. However, we also have to balance that with this desire to keep the energy in yourself and in your company feeling very achievable and feeling like a winning culture. And so consider if you made, 125K this year, that could be, a quarter of that goal if your goal was 500K, or it could start being 125% of that goal. And the reason I bring this up is we get to set our own targets. And choosing a target right now for your revenue that's achievable is going to start snowballing into more and more success. So that is just an advice I have for everyone out there is to sort of, when you're putting a big number out there, is to ask yourself, is this a vanity metric or is this something my team can actually achieve with these goals? It might actually be better for our team morale or for our company if we just focused on closing one deal and we're successful, in the next quarter rather than, over analyzing or over considering that big North Star because not achieving that might frankly dissuade people at your company. And so, in terms of finalizing this new objective coming from that, 500K revenue in 2025, really where I've put the objective is I want to close 10K in new business this month. I know this is an achievable number, and we'll kind of talk about how you can come up with your own specific number for your business. But this is something that will continue to snowball for our company and for our conversations because it's going to continue to grow for us over the course of this year. And then, the final thing I want to say about OKRs and objectives and goals here is there can be a real perfectionism, a real desire to create the perfect goals instead of acting. I know at one of my startups, they would traditionally release objectives for the quarter a good month, if not 6 weeks into the next quarter. And so we would already be, halfway through that period of time before we actually were able to start acting. And so I would encourage everyone, if there's that perfectionism in themselves, that they really challenge that, write your goal in frankly 10 minutes and see what you can come up with in terms of what you want to achieve and how you will go about achieving it and start doing rather than, spend too much time analyzing what you could be doing, if that makes sense.
And also, just adding in here, perfection is the enemy of done. I think, particularly in the context of a startup, you're looking to feel probably 70 to 80% confident in moving forward. There's no such thing as getting 100% there, especially with all the unknowns. The other thing, too, is it's safe to assume if you're setting a goal around revenue, you want that number to be going up and to the right. How much it's going up and to the right doesn't really matter as much as how much you're focusing on the inputs and figuring out what does and doesn't work. Because ultimately, over time, as you figure out what is the premier sales channel, what are the tactics that work more often than not, you start baking into more or less a recipe, saying if we follow this recipe, the cake byproduct is going to be, closed deals, revenue growth, et cetera, et cetera. So again, perfection is the enemy of done. The most important thing, and I can't stress this enough, especially for founders, is going to be execution. Yes, on all the things, but most importantly, on the right things that matter. And of course, early on, it's going to be revenue, revenue, revenue.
And so I want to pause here, take your guys' pulse. What goal mistake do you guys think you make the most frequently? As you guys are kind of putting that into the chat and we're seeing what you guys have to say. I would definitely say that perfectionism for me or the sort of vanity metrics are definitely things I can relate to. Being able to just kind of move forward with what's working, and move fast is something I'm always constantly challenging myself to do as a founder. How about you, Max?
I see a lot of founders run into vanity metrics. I can't tell you how often they're like, we want to do this many posts on social media. We want to have these many followers. And I was like, followers and engagement on social media doesn't pay the bills. The way that I like to frame it is if you are pre-launch, you're trying to get signals of product market fit, aka are there people that are saying this is interesting, this solves a real problem, and actually signaling that they are interested in paying for it with their credit card. And then if you're post launch and if you're driving some amount of revenue, the only thing that matters, and I'll give you three of those things to focus on, it's going to be revenue, revenue, revenue. And that is the only thing to focus on. Everything else is a nice to have because at the end of the day, if you're an early stage venture that's not bringing in revenue, your days are numbered and you have to really reconfigure what is the most important thing.
Yeah. I see in the chat here, Aiden, not patting yourself on the back after doing a good amount of work. And I do think this is a really great one. Bringing that culture of celebration of, at Build Bedrock, we call it wins and reflections every Friday, making sure that we celebrate all of the wins that we've had. It can be really easy to, go down on yourself and think about progress, unless you're really noting what's gone well every week.
Yeah, building off of what Aiden shared, and thank you for sharing that in the chat. It's also so important and so critical to figure out what you're learning along the way because a lot of the early days, especially when it comes to growth strategy, it's going to feel like you are throwing spaghetti on the wall because that's more or less what you're doing.
Mm.
Checking things off the list, not only what does work, but also what does not work is also important because you go from there's 101 ways that I can sell my product or service to, okay, now there's 98, now there's 95. And you crystallize in more and more on those tried and true marketing and sales tactics that are important. The tough thing that you'll hear a lot is that you have to find many ways to sell your product or service. And the fact of the matter is, especially at a startup, you only really need one tried and true sales channel. And that most likely will get you to a few $1 million in annual revenue before you start figuring out what's that second, what's that third sales channel. All too often, I see founders trying to boil the ocean, and it is just difficult and grueling for them to be able to navigate.
Yeah, definitely. I'm seeing also in the chat from, Michaela here, never knowing what a realistic goal is. I think that's definitely a challenge we see people have. Max alluded to that historical data. So a lot of startups, as they kind of move up and grow up, will, have CRMs, customer relationship management tools. They'll have databases maybe of what has happened. But I do think, and we'll get to this too in a second, a realistic goal, I think, is whatever we're kind of setting out what we can achieve here. I guess like to put it another way, you can achieve maybe what you've achieved in the past. So for example, I tend to look at my successes even in my personal life with running and understanding like what about that habits I formed in that activity can I copy into my professional life and be as successful doing. But I think if you're starting at zero, it's mostly getting to one for any type of goal you're setting and then continuing to improve for there. Max, I think you want to jump in here.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that, and it also ties into what Tia shared in the chat too. The funny thing about projections, and I'll kind of quote one of my finance professors back when I was studying at Pitt. Ultimately, we're always trying to move from WAG to swag. And what I mean by that is we're trying to move from wild ass guess to scholarly wild ass guess. Most projections are complete and utter shit. It's a best guess at best. Even people who have deep background in analysis and finance, a lot of the times it's just the best guess that they can do with the data, with the information they have. And the tough thing, particularly for a founder, is you don't have that data. You don't have those benchmarks. So it's one of those things that is completely normal for you to say, okay, I'm hitting my goals too quickly or I overshot. But the important thing is that you are actually going through the action of goal setting because that'll help you calibrate over time and get better at it over time. Another thing to consider, and this is another tool of the trade, is scenario planning. So let's just say I'm planning my revenue strategy for Q1 of 2025. I might bake out three different scenarios, scenario A, B, and C. A is going to be either I maintain what I'm doing or it lessens, aka I'm making the same amount of money, or it goes down. And it's either I'm bad in both cases because I'm not growing or I'm losing market share. B is going to be I grow, and maybe it's at a modest amount. It's, I'm growing, but not as fast as I want to. And then scenario C is going to be I knock it out of the park. And the important thing of knowing that is it gives you an idea of what might happen over the course of a quarter. And you can start thinking through what are the inputs I have to do to make that potential set of futures a reality. And if I find myself aiming for scenario C, but I'm somewhere between scenario A and B, aka not growing as much as I can, what can I learn from it? And if I'm in the middle of the quarter, how might I be able to course correct it? So those are two things to keep in mind. WAG to swag, as my finance professor once said, and then also the power of scenario planning and using the critical thinking to think through how do I navigate, how do I move forward in this new quarter or time period, however you slice and dice it.
Yeah. I think something I actually saw yesterday was thinking about your goals a lot more around, good, better, best. And so my good goal might be that bare minimum TIA, but this is better, maybe doing 1.5, and then this is my best, which would be 2xing. And one other thing I think, and we'll probably get to this too in some of the coaching options, but thinking about what levers you have to tweak here might be helpful. So maybe you're only able to work with two clients a month, and so moving your pricing higher in order to increase your revenue. Are you kind of undervaluing what your startup or what your services actually do? So thinking of not just the quantity of customers, but the other levers you have on price could help translate that revenue goal into something that's more accomplishable while not actually doing all that much, then changing your marketing or adjusting your value proposition. Did we get any other in the chat here? I don't think so, but you guys are also welcome to come off mute too and join in on the conversation. Well, we're gonna move here to the kind of second portion of how to set your revenue goal. And when I say this is perhaps the most simplistic way to set your revenue goal, I really mean it. It is, you could actually do this in 10 minutes kind of a strategy here that we kind of put together, learning from all of these mistakes. So, step one, we're going to start with that objective. And the question I had for you guys is, what revenue did your startup make last month? And now, for some of you, that might be zero, and that's okay. If it is zero, I would say your revenue goal for the next month, the next quarter, is getting to one. That is the area that you're most operating in, is getting that first customer. It's a lot less about, I'd say, the dollar value and a lot more about the getting to that first early adopter. For those of you who are at a position where you're making revenue, what did you make last month, and matching it and making it more systematized, I think would be a great place to start. We've talked a little bit more about the specifics of what revenue stream, what lever are you going to pull on, whether that's new customers, renewing existing customers, or increasing your pricing, launching a new product, just knowing exactly where you're going to drive that revenue from. And then ASAP. This is your focus for the month. This is your focus for the quarter. I kind of skimmed over the slide, but when I was moving us from, that North Star of I want to make 500K in revenue in 2025. If you're anything like me, that sounds like you have 12 months to figure it out. Why would I figure it out today? You really need to challenge yourself, quite honestly, to make this a priority for you this month, this day, this quarter. If we're going to start translating your work today into that 500,000 by the end of the year. Oh, Max, I think you're talking on mute.
Thank you for catching that
Mhm.
technology. I want to hop in here just to hit home that point around focus. If you have five things that you're focusing on nothing. I'll share a little bit about the time that I was at fledging that consumer electronics startup. We had at the time, we were selling on direct to consumer on our own website. We had a few distribution partners and we were selling on the eBay e-commerce platform. And one of the growth channels that we had identified was this little known website. You might have heard of it, Amazon. And what I did is I said, I'm going to put all of my time, all of my focus, remove everything else from my calendar, and just really see if I can get Amazon off the ground and how much money we might be able to make selling on the platform. What that led to is in 8 months, I turned Amazon from a channel that was not launched to launched and making us over $1 million in annual recurring revenue. There's a lot of things to keep in mind there. We had a product that was very well made for Amazon. Yes, there were a lot of global giants, think Samsung, Other World Computing, and I'm forgetting the other one that were on the platform, but we were able to run circles around them. But the main thing that came into that was I was able to clear out the space and say, what is the biggest bet that's worth taking? What is the thing I'm going to focus on? And going back to what Victoria said earlier, am I clearing my calendar so that I'm not only saying this is my focus, but I'm actually acting in a way where most of my time, most of my energy, and most of my expertise is going towards that. So I can't stress that enough, that focus piece. If you identify something that's truly going to move the needle for yourself, your business, you really have to make sure that you're carving out the time to be able to focus on it and execute on it almost nearly exclusively.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the area I actually see this the most is in, ideal client profile, ICP definitions, where a lot of startups want to put their eggs in a lot of baskets. And while there's certainly going to be an experimentation over your best fit customer, I always highly encourage a client to really stick with their guns for at least a month or a quarter and really test out who we, have strategically decided to be their best fit. By continuing to muddy that messaging and focus on too many potential customers at once, it can really just be too big of a distraction for a smaller company who's trying to launch and get started. So now that we've covered step one, and again, this would get you to, I'm going to close 10K in new business this month type of a goal. Now I really want to take you into step two of, okay, Victoria, I'm only going to try for this 10K. I'm really going to shoot for this dollar amount. But how do you make that happen? And we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to be very specific on how you might figure out what revenue generating channels to decide on. So, my first question to you would be, what methods have worked for you in the past? You've either, had a customer conversation before, you've done a customer discovery conversation, you've done some networking. So, what has truly worked for you is where I'd start. I'd say for like our company at Build Bedrock, we've had a lot of success with our webinars and with networking. And so for our revenue goal, those are the channels that we are putting most time back into because they've been the ones that have proven themselves in our benchmarking from last year. My second question of, how to build a key result that will drive your revenue. What is something that a competitor is doing to reach your market? So for that, you might can say, well, I don't have any competitors. No one sells something like me. Someone is selling something to the market. So I have a client right now that is selling to the automotive industry, right? They're targeting companies in that sphere. There are plenty of startups, there are plenty of big businesses that sell to automotive. What are the types of channels, whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's email? whether that is, an inbound marketing campaign, by releasing guides about the automotive industry. What are the different things that we see in this space to target the either industry or personas we are most interested in? And let's test out if that could work for us. Does that make sense for us? And then, the third question I would ask you when coming up with those key results is, where are you weakest right now? You certainly don't need to be have all your eggs in different types of revenue channel baskets. But there are probably a couple areas where you could stand to improve, whether that's maybe a website that needs to be rebuilt, whether that is sending those LinkedIn connection requests because you've gotten some inbound leads and you think a little bit more work might strengthen that. So thinking about those three questions, if you answer each of those questions with one idea, you have your three key results for that objective and you have that starting point. 10 minutes are over. Let's start taking action and start putting this into translating that revenue goal for your company. Max, anything you wanted to add here with the sort of what you would consider? Okay, great.
No, you nailed it.
All right. So that's really honestly everything, Max and I have for content. And actually that's not fair. Max and I could talk about this for another good hour with or without slides. Um,
Pleased.
being honest. But we really want to, open this up to you guys. We're happy to, have someone come off mic, come on video here, and kind of talk about either a revenue goal or another goal they're hoping to put here. I know I saw someone's interested in launching a product this year. I know a lot of you might be interested in getting your first customer. So if that is something you want to share with us and have us talk you through, we're happy to do that or answer any other questions you might have.
And while we give you all some time to see if you want to participate in that way, the thing I'll say is this is a safe space. The main thing we're trying to do is figure out how we can have the theory that we covered meet the context that is yourself, your business. And if you are brave enough to come off mute or to work with us, we'll be able to do our best to help you with taking a goal that you have and make it more structured, make it more actionable, and everything else. So this is a invitation for anyone who wants to riff with us live on the webinar.
Hey, yeah, I can jump in. Nice to meet you. It's a great presentation. My name is Kevin from Frankfurt, Germany. And yeah, we are OntoWorks. We built a startup where we make an AI content machine, basically, where you can automate your social media posts. So you have an idea or from your pipeline you want to post, and you just go to our AI and you get like music, video generated with text and speech, like the whole package, and you can like post it automatically on all your social media channels. And we already built all the software and we about to launch. And yeah, right now it's very hard like to figure out all the marketing and like set up everything that we get our first customers. So we're basically in the pre-launch phase right now, and we want to launch at the end of January to go to the market.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. Thinking about where we are right now, we're at the beginning-ish of January, and you've got what a plan to launch in 3 weeks. What needs to be done between now and end of January to make that happen?
So we currently finishing our website. It's like in the last step, and we are creating some marketing content on all social media platforms, like pointed to the social media platforms. Like on TikTok, you will see ads that are like you want to create TikTok posts, go to ontoworks.ai and start creating, and the same for Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and everything. So we target on the short formats to like build our brand and set up the how to use our platform. And so we want to get the customers on our on our dashboard so they can like subscribe and just start creating their content.
Are you
Gotcha. Oh, sorry, go Victoria.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are you guys using like a freemium model then, or like what are you kind of looking at pricing wise?
So in the you have a premium option. So when you create your videos, you get a little ontowards tag in the end, like you know from TikTok and Instagram when you download a video. And also the subscription starts at $30 per month, and then you get 5 minutes to create. So we have like you buy minutes, not some kind of tokens or something
Hmm.
you from other websites. And the more the subscription costs, the more minutes you can get to create your content. I
And
can write you the website in the chat so you can.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
that'd
great,
be
Kevin. Put the URL in the chat. A lot of what you're doing right now is what I call like the sales readiness bucket, right? It's website, marketing, onboarding, social. My question for you is, who's your customer? Are you selling this to directly to consumers? Are you selling this to businesses? Tell me more about what specifics you have around your target customer here.
So our beachhead market is basically musicians and artists which can upload like a music track and easily get generated like a clip for the music, which they can upload on like TikTok and Instagram or use for the Spotify canvases. And then we want to go to like marketing agencies and all kinds of creators or businesses that have a high output of content they want to post. So I basically you're a company, you want to launch your product and you need like dozens of videos to like promote your product and get some informations out there. And then basically you can get like the whole video pipeline out of like one prompt or one text you can type in, and then you can choose, do you only want like the music with the video, or do you want the text over it that you create yourself, or do you want that the text is voiced up? That's basically the main market we want to target then.
Hmm.
Gotcha. And if I were to kind of hold your feet to the fire a little bit more in the focus piece, you mentioned musicians, artists, I think even agencies. Who are you most excited to sell to? Who do you think will find the most value in this of those three focuses?
So I think the that's hard to say right now because we haven't like figured out that
Hmm.
yet. We are like in the stage to
But
figure
if
that
you
out.
were to, and sorry for cutting you off, Kevin, if you were to make a bet or if you were to make a guess.
So if you're like a record label that has like hundreds of artists under the contract, and you need uh, 50 Spotify canvases per day to like promote, get the music out there and promote everything properly, and get a lot of social media content out there to yeah, gets reach. So the more you post, the more reach you get, and you easily can use our platform like to get a load of content out there with low costs for them.
Hmm. Gotcha. I'll share a comment and I'll bounce it over to Victoria for a question. But just in the interest of time, I asked that question because where marketing works best is when you can be hyper specific. And what you just did there is you went from something arguably quite general, artists, musicians, agencies, to record labels that have at least 100 artists and do a lot of work to promote those artists. And what you can do with that is reverse engineer and say, maybe who are all the record labels? Let's just say geography wise, I know you're based in Germany, but let's just say who are all the record labels in the US? And of those record labels, which have at least 100 artists, you niche it down more. Who is in charge of promotion and being able to advertise and market those artists? You get down to a job title, and you ultimately go from, we're focused on musicians to we have a segmented list of companies. And not only that, but a segmented list of job titles, aka specific people at those companies to reach out to. And then what you do is you find a way to reach out. That might be through network if you have connections in the music industry. That might be through outbound, think email, LinkedIn, social, cold call, to be able to see, does our value proposition of what this software does resonate with those folks and the pain point that they have. So ultimately what you did there is, again, you went from something rather general and you said, okay, if I'm going to niche down and run an experiment and it may or may not work, this is something very specific that you can do a sales or a growth experiment around to see, do we find any interest, right? So I want to commend you on that. And I also wanted to kind of generalize that for the audience because, we have less than 10 minutes. So I'll pause there and bounce it over to Victoria if you have any questions or comments.
Yeah. So I think the thing, just kind of skimming your website really quickly here, I feel like you have the tool to market your product already in your hands. Like what you create is a marketing tool already. And I would really strongly encourage you to leverage that. I kind of looked at your channels here. I see a couple of videos. And so I would highly suggest you continue to improve the virality and the marketing of your own content because that will pay dividends in terms of getting that attention you're looking for because you're kind of selling that already and you can use your own tool to market yourself. My other suggestion would be if record labels are what you are feeling is the best fit, finding a local one. There's a lot of advantages to sort of selling into the pond you're already in, where you already have a sort of like kind of network location familiarity. And then be willing to offer something for free, especially when you're going from 0 to 1. You have to prove yourself more than most companies. I'm thinking, pick that 1 to 5 record companies that you're actually thinking this could be a really good fit for us. Make them a couple of videos based off their musicians already and send that over. Like, how does that kind of little bit of work for them change the conversation when you're already showing them the impact? Look what we could do for you. Just a little bit of a taste there for this type of company. Yeah. And I think I'll leave it there and see if you have any other questions for us. But hopefully, if this has been a little helpful for you.
Amazing tips. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Max. You're amazing. Thank you.
Of
Yeah.
course. And thank you. There's only so much we can do in roughly 10 minutes, but thank you for participating. Thank you for raising your hand. And the last question I have for you, Kevin, is what is, if applicable, a takeaway or an insight that you're leaving this conversation with?
I think it's like how to like make a plan like from step 1 to 10, how to achieve like the right goal. And sometimes it's very hard to set up the steps properly, and oftentimes it changes. So like, how do I schedule my plans like so I can achieve my revenue goal?
Yeah, it's breaking it down into that recipe or those smaller steps. You're right on the money.
Yeah, it's really reverse engineering kind of at its finest form. Awesome. We do still have some time if someone else wants to be in the hot seat here. If not, I'm gonna set Max loose and he's gonna just talk about auditing OKRs. So feel free to share, enjoy that or save us from it.
Save us from it. Going once, going twice.
All right. Well, before we let people get too far away, I do want to hear from you. We are doing a lot more webinars here at Build Bedrock, and I'm really interested in what topics are most appealing to you guys. Here are 3 that we're thinking of choosing for our next webinar, which will be January 29th. I realize my screen is paused, and now it is not paused. So we're considering a webinar on, how to use LinkedIn to book meetings each month with potential clients. We're considering a pricing strategy webinar, or a HubSpot versus Apollo sales tech stack. So three different topics we know are of interest to a lot of startup founders, but if you want to emoji react and let us know what you think would be most valuable, that'll really inform kind of our next decision here on what webinar to host. I'm seeing some initial selection for HubSpot versus Apollo. Also, feel free to jump in the chat if you have a better idea. I'd love to steal it.
I'm gonna, in the spirit of sharing hot takes, because we were talking about if hot dogs were sandwiches earlier, I'm more of a pipe drive guy myself when it comes to CRMs. I'm just gonna say that and
Oh,
leave that out there. I see
Shout
Charles is
out.
having a reaction to that.
oh no, it's a good thing my HubSpot partner manager isn't on this call then.
What a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. I think I'm actually seeing one for LinkedIn, one for startup pricing, and two for a HubSpot versus Apollo. Any
Yeah,
other votes?
I think I saw you got interest in all three.
Yeah. Well, then I think that means they're all interesting then, but Michaela here is going to drop a link to our calendar here that you can subscribe to, so you get invited to our next webinar. The other thing I'll say is you can find Max and I very easily on LinkedIn and on the web if you're interested in, future conversation with us and kind of applying our techniques to your companies. But I do really hope that this webinar was really valuable for you. Feel free to tell us, it was amazing, you learned a lot, good, could be better, or not a good fit for you. If it wasn't already pretty clear, we really value your feedback and making these webinars as great as they can be. So really appreciate that. Go ahead, Max, too.
Fantastic. And I just wanted to, I know we've got a minute or two left. I want to share a special thank you to Victoria for putting this together. This has been very informative. It's also been great to be able to hop on and be able to riff together with her, with you all. If this is something that's a pain point for you, is something that's of interest for you, I will say it. Reach out to Victoria. She is great. She is phenomenal. And she is going to be someone that's very, very helpful for you on topics like this. So a round of applause. Kudos to Victoria.
Oh, thanks, Max. I
Of
do
course.
appreciate that. I did not tell him to say that, so I'm a little embarrassed now. But
I want my check in the mail. I'm
yeah.
kidding.
You have to pay me first for being the face of your like events. Max runs a networking event here in Pittsburgh, and a photo of me somehow is the advertising shot he uses. So yeah. Cool. Well, you are welcome to stick around if you do want to hear about objective scoring. Otherwise, I'll say again, thank you. At Build Bedrock, we do offer a lot of different services to help you guys get started on getting those first customers, whether that's your positioning, how you speak to those customers, marketing, what sort of channels you're interested in exploring, whether that's outbound or inbound, and then sales. The most important thing at the end of the day is that you actually close a deal. So if you are interested, feel free to reach out and be happy to have a future conversation with you. All right, I think they're all yours, Max, to talk about audit scoring.
All right, let's go into objective scoring. So I will make this super quick. And again, if y'all have something at 5 o'clock, I know it's the end of the workday. I can't wait till going and making myself dinner after this anyways. But we make these OKRs. We run them through the quarter. And at the end, we say, did it work? How do we know? There's two ways to do this typically. There's objective and subjective scoring. I'll start first with objective scoring. So if we can go to that next slide, please.
Yes.
So objective scoring, let's just say I want to close 10 new clients in the quarter. It's basically saying at the end of the quarter, how many did I close? And we have a green, yellow, and red zone. So green is we delivered, yellow is we made progress, but we fell short, and red is, wow, we really missed the mark. So I might say I closed 8 clients. Okay, that's good. I'm very close to that goal. I'll give myself a 0.8 out of 1, or I closed 3, 0.3 out of 1. Very straightforward, very simple. And again, this goes back to the objective piece, meaning it is the what, and it is a finish line that when we cross it, we know, but also if we don't make it to the finish line, we can know exactly what mile marker we were at when we missed the mark. So that is objective scoring, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I'm not going to bother you too much on it. Let's go to the next slide, please, and talk about the subjective self-assessment. This table is one of my favorite things to talk about. So going back to that same example, bringing in 10 new customers in that quarter, you can see that there's various amounts of progress being made going from top to bottom, 7 clients, 10 clients, 8 clients, 9 clients. And then we have a subjective score, right? And just to go through this row by row, the first row is, okay, we closed 7 clients, but I'm going to give myself not a 0.7, but a 0.9 score. And I go into the write-up about why I did that. Okay, there was a slump in the market. This was a lot tougher than we thought it would be. And I worked really, really damn hard to close these 7 clients. So even though I fell short of the goal, I'm going to give myself a higher score because of a lot of the things that we simply can't know because we can't tell the future. Going down to that second row, for progress, okay, I got 10 out of 10 new customers, but I'm giving myself not a 1 out of 1, but a 0.7. The reason is, I've reached this goal in week 8 out of the quarter, and there's 12 weeks typically in a quarter, and I realized that we set the bar too low. So yes, I hit the goal, but we should have aimed higher, and now I know that going into the next quarter. Again, using that same exercise for row 3 and then row 4. In row 3, I closed 8 clients. I gave myself not a 0.8, but rather a 0.6. And again, I'm writing this up and saying, yes, I got 8 new clients, but it was more luck than hard work. One customer brought in 5 others behind them. So it's one of those things that I did not do a lot of the inputs to really earn all these customers. It was luck. And sadly, we can't build businesses on luck. So it's one of those things that, yes, we hit the mark, but also we didn't do so in a predictable, repeatable, scalable manner, which means that we can't really take a lot that we learned, or maybe we didn't learn that much going into the next quarter, the next quarter, the next quarter. And last but not least, row 4, I closed 9 out of 10 customers, and I'm going to say instead of a 0.9, I give myself a 0.5. And even though I managed to land 9 new customers, and this is very important, only 7, or actually just 7 of them brought in very little revenue. So it's one of those things, it goes back into what are we measuring? And again, I could close customers all day, every day, and have them pay me $1, but it's really figuring out what is the contract value that they're bringing, how much money are we making with them, et cetera, et cetera. So it's this self-assessment piece that fits into your end of time period, whether that's monthly, quarterly, or annually, what I ultimately call a retrospective. This is where the learning is. This is where the insights are, both the good and bad, to be able to figure out, again, what did work and how can we do it more, what did not work and how can we stop. Doing that to focus more of our effort on what we know works or we believe with a high degree of confidence or our best bets or our best guess might work. So that's a little bit about my soapbox on retrospectives and objective and subjective scoring. So with that, thank you for attending my TED Talk.
Awesome, Max. I definitely took a lot from that.
Fantastic.
If there are any other questions, I do think I still have Max and myself for at least another, 30 minutes, let's say. But thank you guys so much, guys, for joining. We really did enjoy having you. We're always, available to you guys on LinkedIn or our websites. Feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for attending.
Thanks, y'all. Happy Wednesday. Enjoy the snow. And if you have a question, feel free to ask. We're going to be hanging out for a little bit.
Yeah.